Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line on the future of women's awakening, fulfillment and success with Letitia Cook of Women Up Limited and Didi Ananda Rashmika of Mujer Despierta.
Hello, this is Beyond the Bottom Line, a monthly exploration about women's awakening and fulfillment so that all women may reach their full potential, being their full feminine selves. Today, we're going to be talking about fulfillment and freedom of choice. And to me, freedom of choice is also freedom of thought, because you have to think before you choose. So lovely to have you here again, Didi. Thank you so much for sharing this radio show with me. I think Mujer Despierta and Women Up are so complementary in what we want, how we want to help people, how we want to help women really wake up and reach their full potential. So it's a pleasure that we can do this together. So tell me, for you, what's your vision about fulfillment and freedom of thought and freedom of choice, and how can we promote this so that it's more accessible to more women? Because sometimes it seems that it's very blocked off, even if we're not always aware of it.
Mm-hmm. The freedom of choice and the fulfillment, to me, mean when you want to do something that you love to do, you should have the opportunity to explore that. To explore that option. You may change your mind later on. Mm-hmm. Because our fulfillment doesn't come from following someone else's script. Yeah. Our fulfillment comes from following what in our heart we really want to do. And usually that's in a way that not only fulfills us, but will make a contribution as well. Because someone who does something with fulfillment is happily serving others in the process. Mm-hmm. And to have that freedom of choice, we need to be well informed, first of all. But informed not just in the intellectual sense of, there's these kind of jobs and that need to be done and you can choose from them. But in the sense of knowing ourselves, knowing what the programming we have received, because all of us receive programming from our education, from our family, from society. Mm-hmm. And we may not be completely free from them, or we may be in the process of freeing ourselves from it. But we need to be aware of what ideas have been put in our mind that is now guiding our choices. Yeah. So if I have been fed with the idea that, the most important thing is safety, you would see that many, that someone who grew up in a family of entrepreneurs has more of the idea of entrepreneurship than someone who grew up, for example, in a family of civil servants where safety and security is valued very much. Those kind of values have been imposed. I mean, that doesn't have to be a negative sense, but we automatically absorb the values of our environment. Yeah. So if, therefore, I have a dream to be an artist, but I grew up in a family where it's safety and security, financial security, I need to be aware of that programming before I can pursue that dream.
Yes. Yeah. And how do you think we can discover that? Because I think a lot of the time we're just not aware. So we're not aware that we need to try and find out what is our own thought and what thoughts we've had we've inherited or we've acquired from outside. I know for me, a lot of the things that I did automatically, mm-hmm. I had absolutely no idea that it was coming from either my brothers or my teachers or my parents or anything like that, because it's not something that you tell kids to look at as they're growing up. You don't say, do this, but bear in mind, I'm saying this because I'm an entrepreneur and you need to also consider blah, blah, blah. So we really aren't aware that they're not our own thoughts. So how can we discover what thoughts we've acquired?
I think what is very useful is when we run into obstacles.
Yeah.
Or into walls. Like, for example, if I'm from a family of civil servants and I want to be an entrepreneur or want to travel or do something very considered how can I say, considered risky,
Yes.
or, not working on my financial security, is when I then run into people tell me things, and that makes me think, or I run into my own fears. So why would I have fear to do that? I really love to do it. And then you can usually the chatter in your mind is a repetition of what you've been told earlier on.
Yes.
Like, you don't know how can you build up your pension when you do this? How can you do this? Like, usually we repeat what we've been told, which is our programming. But it's important to remember to analyze, or it sounds very intellectual, but to reflect on that chattering in your mind.
Yeah, and ask questions like, what is it saying? Or even things like, in what way is it trying to protect me? Because the chatter in our mind, it's not always trying to stop us. It's just trying to protect one part of us, one fear that we have. So listening to the chatter, not necessarily to follow it, but to help us get to a deeper level, to find the fear that we've got, or the doubt, or the insecurity. Because it's not always a fear. Sometimes it's just a hesitation or a lack of confidence in a certain area. So I think
it may be good to ask yourself, in that sense of lack of confidence, to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that could happen?
Yes.
And you may spend 3 years chasing your dream, or what you thought was your dream, and it changes, or you don't want to do it anymore, or whatever circumstances change in life. You haven't lost anything. You gained 3 years of experience. Like, it puts things in perspective if we think, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so for me, freedom of thought is one thing. It's what we've just been talking about, knowing that the thoughts that go through your head are actually yours. They're your own free thoughts. They're not influenced by anybody else. But then for me, the next step after that is freedom of choice. Because sometimes I've found that there are things that I'm not doing happily, as in, it's not my choice of what I've wanted to do. It's something I don't particularly like, but it can be a situation where what I'm getting from doing that job, doing that action, is giving me something else that I want, or giving me some other objective, some other goal. I'm getting a solution from that. So I think freedom of choice can also be doing something you don't particularly want to do, but you're choosing to do it because it's giving you something else that is more important, that's a bigger priority.
Well, it's like giving meaning to the thing that you have to do.
Yes.
I may not like to do the administration, but I love to run my own art gallery, Part of that is I need to do the administration, unless I can pay someone else to do it, whatever. But it has a purpose because this is my dream to do.
Yeah.
When something has meaning, we can put up with almost anything.
Yes.
When you said earlier, my thoughts belong to me, I think one thing to bear in mind alongside that is to not take your thoughts as absolute.
Yes.
The same for when we have fears, or when we have emotions, or when we feel up or down. All of that is part of the mind, not part of our soul.
Yeah.
So all of that is subject to change. That's the good news. It's influenced and all of that in the past, but even now I can change my thought.
Yeah.
Can I tell a story?
Yes.
There is a story of an eagle that, as a little chick, ended up with the chickens. And so the eagle grew up with the chickens. And was, couldn't make the sound very well, but other than that, it fitted in with the chickens. And one day another eagle was flying over, hungry, wanted to eat a chicken, came down closer and saw that there was an eagle among the chickens. Said, what's going on there? So he picked up the eagle, took it up, and the eagle is like, don't eat me, you know. It's like, you stupid, you know. You're not a chicken, I'm a chicken. And he took him to, I guess, a pond, you know. He said, look what you are. And he's like, no, I'm a chicken. Then he took him up high and dropped him. Yeah. So what do you do when you're dropped in the air? You start moving your arms, right? Probably even we would do that in that case. And the eagle managed to fly, right? So the eagle realized he's an eagle and he would never think again he's a chicken.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what we think and what we think about ourselves sometimes is a very limited idea of what we've been growing up with the chickens. But if you want to be an eagle, you know, you need to realize your nature.
Yes. Yeah. And think like an eagle. I think that's
mingling with the chickens.
It's a lovely story, that. I should have listened to that myself.
It's never too late, Anna.
I know. So, okay, and so how can we use to our own not to our own freedom, to awaken ourselves to reach our potential with freedom of thought and freedom of choice? How do you think we can start exploring this to help us awaken, to help us achieve more potential?
I think we're coming back to the point of self-reflection.
Yeah. Because
so much of what we do is unconscious.
Yeah.
And when we get really busy and we run around in Dutch, my native language, we have an expression, kip zonder kop, a headless chicken. I'm not sure if we have the same expression in English.
We have it in English, running around like a headless chicken.
That's the one. So we are so busy running around, keeping everything going, and even keeping ourselves just busy, even sometimes on purpose, not to have to think, that we don't get in touch with what we really want.
Yeah.
So being conscious and reflecting on yourself and reflecting on where you want to go in life. I mean, you don't take a taxi in a city without an address to go to, right?
Yeah.
But in life, we go many times without thinking where we're going, like a headless chicken.
Exactly. Very true.
Or a headless eagle, maybe.
Yes. I prefer the headless eagle. It's got more scope. So, okay. And then with this, how can we use freedom of thought, freedom of choice to take us towards the idea of fulfillment and what fulfillment can really be? And also, what do you think fulfillment is? What does it mean for you?
Well, if you don't feel the freedom of choice to make the choices you want to make in life, you won't have the freedom to take the path according to your idea of fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't actually, it's not only in terms of careers. If someone says, I want to be a full-time mom until my kids are going to school, or maybe forever, that is a freedom too.
Yes.
And that gives me fulfillment. That's what I really love to do, right? We are in a society where then someone would ask, well, you're not working, right?
Yeah.
To whatever it is that gives you fulfillment according to your deepest desire or what you want to contribute to the world, what you want to contribute to your own life, what you really love to do, that is what will give you fulfillment. But in order to do that, you need to have the freedom to choose to do that.
Yes.
It means the freedom of attachments to certain kind of lifestyle at times.
Yeah.
The attachment to maybe security,
financial
security, which hardly ever adds up with being free and doing what you love to do. Not that there is necessarily risk in it, but you need to take a risk sometimes outside your comfort zone.
Yes.
To create something new, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And the freedom of choice in that case also has to do with confidence.
Yeah.
So we're coming back to the inner success. When you feel confident, you can manage your fears, you are harmonious with yourself and with your environment. With that kind of inner success, you can make the choices you wish to make towards what fulfills you. So it's like two parts: the inner success, the inner harmony, confidence, strength, the solid you, and knowing where you're going. It's knowing where you want to go.
Yes. And your stories are interesting because it's made me think of two ladies I know. And this is really a perfect example of choice and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, for years, she was manager of 3 stores, and she's very good, really very good. The staff were happy, the stores were successful. Mm-hmm. She did an excellent job. She had really good relationships with everybody. It was a good team. It was good. You couldn't find faults with it. The customers liked her, everybody. But she loved the people she worked with, but she just felt something was missing. The spark was not there. And she was like, why? Why do I feel like this? Why aren't I happy? Because things are going well. I've got a good job, blah, blah, blah. And so she started thinking about it and came to various conclusions. Like she didn't really like having the responsibility for all of it. It didn't give her the physical activity she wanted or the mental peace of mind, because although she was very good at coping with the stress and managing the problems, it wasn't what she wanted. So she resigned, and I think she's very courageous to have taken that decision, because it's not what many people do. And this is one of the reasons I think why I'm doing this radio program, so that people can see that they don't have to do what they've always done, and where the idea of resigning and doing something different, it shouldn't have to be a courageous decision. It should be a normal decision. So though my friend Jenny, I admire her immensely. I think it was great she did it, because in our current day and age, people are still like, ooh, I'm not sure about that. But she had the guts to do it. And she now she's self-employed. She has a small number of clients. She doesn't see them much. It's not a lot of face-to-face work. It's a lot more physical activity. And it leaves her mind free. And she's discovered things like meditation and all sorts of self-development and things like that. She's absolutely blossoming.
Right. And it's considered courageous because to step away from something that is supposedly working well or successful is considered courageous. The good is the enemy of the best.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly.
If you would get out from a job that you're really unhappy in, it's like, and it's going badly and people don't like, don't like you, and you have arguments the whole time, good you got out. When you get out of something that supposedly went well, but it's not actually according to, this was interesting what you said, it didn't have for her a purpose.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Something was missing,
Yep. Yep.
And actually that's what we're talking about next month.
Yes, exactly, right. But I've got another story, another career woman. She was in the city like you used to be. And she was quite a high flyer, and she used to look up, she was HR and customer care and things like that, and she used to fly to various very exotic places around the world to meet clients, 5-star everything, and I was completely jealous, but never mind. And she did that for several years, and she was very successful, very highly respected. Everybody thought she was great. The clients were always happy when she was there. She found solutions to the problems, etc., blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
She chucked it all in, okay, to study psychology. So she's actually gone back to university and is studying psychology. She's my age, so she's not young. She started, I think she must have chucked it all in about 3-4 years ago, something like that. Because although she knew she was good, although she appreciated the fact that she helped the clients and all of that, again, for her, the spark wasn't there. It wasn't what she wanted. And I think these two ladies are really good examples of what fulfillment is and how you can go beyond the bottom line, like the title of our show, because they did have the success. They did tick all the boxes for the bottom line, but they weren't fulfilled. And they wanted to do something that made them feel fulfilled. That again, we were talking about energy in the last show, about physical and mental energy and nutrition and fitness and things like that. And it came down to energy, like freedom of choice and fulfillment. When you feel fulfilled, you've got that extra energy, you've got that spark, you've got the desire to get up in the morning because you can't wait to do something you love.
Exactly.
For me, that is success.
To have the passion that you look, when we wake up in the morning and you look forward to the day, that fills you with energy, positively, happily. When you get up in the morning dreading that it's Monday and that there's another 5 days until it's weekend again.
You want to get up with the sunshine.
Yeah.
Exactly what we've said, that nails it. Whether you're an eagle amongst the chickens and you can discover that in fact you really are an eagle and you can do eagle things, or whether you realize that what you're doing doesn't give you that spark, that energy, the passion you can feel, the happiness you feel, the flow. I think people who are into sport and running and things like that, the runner's high you get, the flow you get when you're doing sport to a certain level, that is a similar feeling to when you have a fulfilling life. So anything else you want to add?
No, I would just like you said, we consider women, like those two women you mentioned, we consider them courageous. I've had the same experience. Well, I was called crazy first, actually.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but
but when it turned out well, then people say, well, you're lucky, actually, they often say. But looking back, when they know the story, they say, well, it was courageous. Yes, maybe it was. But to bear in mind, and I think I mentioned it on the first interview we've had, is you bear in mind the saying, piece of wisdom, that a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what a ship is built for.
Yes.
And I think there's a book that I would recommend, even though I must admit I haven't read it myself. I've read the summary, and even that makes me want to read it. I just haven't got my hands on it yet. Is the 5 regrets, the top 5 regrets of the dying?
Yes.
Have you heard of that?
No.
There was a nurse, she may have been Australian, who worked in palliative care.
Yeah.
So she would be looking after people in the last weeks or months of their life.
Yeah.
And so that was also especially a generation for the men of that generation who were really much in the traditional role of the provider of the family, right?
Yeah.
And nobody on their deathbed has ever wished they would have spent more time at the office.
Exactly.
But I think one of the now I'm doing it from memory, I hadn't prepared this part. One of the top regrets is to not have chased their dreams, to not, that's one, and not to have done what